Ruchem Aboim B'Shem Hashem. B'Shem Irgin Shir Termas. It's blessed. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's drasha by Rabbi Yosef Viener Shlita, Rav Kehilas Shaar Hashomayim, Wesley Hills. Comes every year to Mechazik L'Olam on the topic of practical guide to money, boundaries, and Achrayus. To have the great covered and schus of sponsoring a Shaar or supporting Irgin Shir Terah, call 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Tonight's Shaar is dedicated by the Gross family, Nishmas Avihem, Reb Chaim ben Pinchas Zchon Levracha Gross, who was one of the founding board members of Irgin Shir Torah, regular Yartzeit Gimel Ov, Nishmas Tzur B'Tzarachayim. Tonight's Shaar is also learned Lili Nishmas Reb Oshet Tzvi ben Rabbi Yosef Michal Vasholem, Rabbi Viener's father, who was just niftat and Nishmas Tzur B'Tzarachayim. I covered the corner by Viener for tonight's drasha.
Hold it? See how it goes. No? See how it goes? Okay. So we're up against a few different things, which hopefully won't stop us. See if it doesn't go. The schus of the tzibur, the ones that are here, the ones that are watching, the ones that will be watching. So this is the first year at Havamina because over the last week and change, I was having more people be meitzim me in Birchas Torah in the morning than my usual once a week shvuas, because I just got up from Shiva yesterday. And the voice took a hit when you don't sleep and when you talk 18 hours a day. So you hear it in my voice. If you can't hear me, let me know. We'll move the mic. So I was thinking that, okay, so you won't have it 1 year, but when you're coming for a couple of decades, and the Olam listens and they give feedback, it's a chizik for me, hopefully a chizik for them. And not by coincidence, a lot of the sugyas we were going to discuss, titles about money and Achrayus and the balance, some in Yanit Staka. So a lot of the things I was going to bring by example was actually from my father, Renika Paras Mishkava. So now it could be an added schus coming off of Shiva, Shloshim. All the examples are real. I lived through them. A lot of them are highly unusual, but it was mechazik me and thousands of other people, b'chayev. Hopefully it'll continue to do so. Although you might leave here wondering if all of it is true or a guzma. There's so much to say in the sugya that'll be borrowed from this that you'll understand it's not a guzma. And there are a lot of shaylas, probably only to get to half of it, that I wanted to discuss that came up over the year in terms of what people are doing for the balance of their parnasa and yanit staka, what they're doing with their vacations. All sorts of fascinating shaylas that I think were never nogea till the experience here in America recently. And if we don't get to, maybe we'll get to 40, 50%, you remind me next year, if we're still in America, that we have to get to them. Let me just start off with the Ma'aseh Shahaya within any tzara or any nisayan or any challenge in life. And this is up there with the most difficult of them. So, Kadosh Baruch Hu wants to look at the matzav, and Avelus is Avelus, but to start remembering and bringing out for yourself, your family, for the Kehilas, what can be learned from people who worked on themselves. And even b'soich ha'maisa, you could see Yad Hashem. Tell you all this is brief, and you're going to have a lot more shadows when you walk out, which is the purpose of this. In 1 hour, if my voice makes it through, Mitzvah Hashem, I saw from the base of Oval, I was talking all day and all night. And afterwards, Kedarken B'Kodesh, which is Gavaldik. Achshadera, I just got back to the shul today and yesterday afternoon, and they came over the long list of shaylas. What did I mean by that line? That line, I was talking to a group of people in a pretty disparate group, and I couldn't include everything. I'm just going to be saying it pretty quickly, so a lot of them you can just mark down will be a shayla. But we'll start off with the first two in terms of the Yad Hashem that I saw. As you all know, it's difficult, if not impossible, to get a ticket on short-term to Yisrael these days. And they have 2 airlines out of 5 flying. I got a call last Erev Shabbos, hard to believe it's only a week. I got a call from my mother that I should make plans to come because my father's in the hospital. Had to look, say, pneumonia, but it was complicated. And on Monday already, Baruch Hashem, they called me, is that the doctors were surprised. It was 100% oxygen, and he was weaned off completely. So they said, there's no rush, you can't get a ticket anyway. We're going home, transferring tomorrow, and maybe look into it Wednesday, Thursday. Which is fine, because can't get tickets anyway. So I'll look for a little further out. On Monday afternoon, Monday evening, very unlike me, which means it wasn't me. I don't take any credit for this. Just see how Hashem controls not just our general life. It's every machshava, really. We have bechira, but so I decided in the middle of a busy day, you know what, I'll do some ishtadlis. I'll look for a ticket. After about 15 minutes, I said, well, what am I doing? I'm not, there's nothing for tonight and tomorrow for sure. And then about to give up. All of a sudden, 2 tickets pop up for the flight, basically at the early hours of the morning. So, even against my better judgment, I said, you know what? I'm usually leaving quickly, and why not grab what you can? And if they're transferring that day, so it'll be a busy day, but why not? So I called my Rebbetzin and said, well, we're leaving to the airport in a few hours. It was one of those Kennedy flights. Muncie, that's not a good mix. Like 10:30 in the morning. So it's an opportunity to daven Nates, which I did in Muncie, and you have to jump in the car right afterwards because it's a 2-hour drive. Baruch Hashem, I made the flight, and 8 hours into the flight, I start getting emails, which is patchy, even if you pay for it. And one of them had a Baruch Dayan Emes in them, Nichum. This is no godless on my part, but the initial reaction is like you want to push back. I was assuming already they saw I left in a hurry, but it's not. It was mudna because I always leave in a hurry and I never know where I'm going. They asked me when I'm going to Yisrael. I said, how would I know? So I didn't want to embarrass the guy. I pushed back. It's not true. It is true. So in life, you'll never regret not writing something and not saying something. It's the first lesson. No godless on my part. That was learned over many years. That discipline was learned from my father. I'll bring you an example in a moment. You don't have to say that much at all. You just have to do it. And it's true, it's not true. It's true, Rahman al-Islam. I'll find out about it. And then I got an email from my son. Am I getting emails? Which my son's a lamdan. It's a very mudna email. Marashach. If I'm not getting emails, I'm not going to see it. And if I'm getting them, l'may nafkamina. So I'm staring at the email, and I said, must be that he wants to tell me something, and he doesn't want to tell me something. Then I looked back and I saw Taka midway through the flight. My sister had sent me an email. It was Taka true, which is a nace. I would have missed the entire Levaya. No shaila. They don't wait. They don't wait a day and a half. That was a big chesed, even though Minig Yerushalayim, which I complied with, the son doesn't go to the Beis Olam, but I made the Levaya. I was able to say a hesped, and I was there, and I had prepared. And I landed at 6 in the morning, and Levaya was at 2. I had a shaila Vanidus in the plane, but I got there, which is not a small nace. I shouldn't have been in that plane. The whole thing was strange. I was thinking, like, why did I get? And she told me, like, don't rush. You can come next week, whatever. It's a Hashem Yatzad Dover. The main story, which I was going to tell over anyway, because Nogea to money and decisions. I'm aware each one of these stories is not Nogea to most people. It's the tremendous chizuk that this really happened. And I heard bits and pieces that I never even heard before from hundreds and hundreds of people over the last couple of days in Muncie who worked with him. He worked in a firm that was pretty Jewish at the time, and it was starting to do well. He was the younger tier like picture a law firm. You like to have to work for 20 years and not make that much money for that time when you're about to start making money, when they bring you up to the executive part. So this story takes place 41 years ago when he was about to make that grade. From Muncie, just to understand what his day was while he was working. From Muncie, there were 4 carpools going in, just from Muncie. For those of you old enough here, you'll know what I'm talking. You'll know which firm I'm talking about. Not important, but very important. It was the largest of its kind in terms of an international commodity firm at the time. And if you were there 10 years longer than he was, you made a lot of money already. He was in the younger tier, and he was almost about to stop making money, which put in 20 years of Shtadlis. And while he was working, I was already, right before Bar Mitzvah, a teenager, all I know is, Baruch Hashem in hindsight, if I was in his Dalet Amis, there was no Benos Darim, there was no Benos Manim. We were learning. Which for a teenager, you have to be pretty amazing to make it geschmack enough that I would want to. I'm sure I pushed back once in a while, and then he probably offered to play basketball for 10 minutes. And I remember one time he offered, we're going to play another 10 minutes, but if I win, you're learning another 2 hours. And he always won for some reason. And it was very nice. It also helped me learn how to learn. He did this while he was working a 10-hour, very pressurized trading day. And his carpool of the 4 that went in, he gave Shaar for an hour. The ride was about an hour and 8 minutes. Somehow, no matter what the traffic was, it was an hour and 8 minutes. And it was an hour Shaar. He learned the Blot Be'in like 9 times. So he gave Shaar in it already, in both directions. And 5 minutes Musa said, I asked him what they learned. He said, Shmir Saloshin. I said, why that? He said, we're going to an office. Shmir Saloshin is very important. And the last 3 minutes was the CBS open, means the Asian markets opened already. He learned 4 or 5 plus hours a day while he was working. I'm describing that because if anybody wants to be inspired by this idea, first discuss it with your wife, because I don't create a shalom bayis problem. And make sure you have something to live on, and make sure you exercise before, because if you're going to pull something like this off and go learn an extra hour and resign and play golf for 9 hours, there's a tzad you should stay working and support yeshivas. There's not one size fits all. I started hearing about this, he was in his late 30s, early 40s. By the time he was 44, he came into his boss, and the CEO of the company was a well-known, these are all Orthodox Jews, and he said, I'm resigning. They spent many months screaming at him. These are the closest friends. He said, you can't do that. You're working 20 years. You're about to start making serious money. What are you doing? And he said that I can't find enough time to learn, and this working is getting in the way of my learning, and I didn't make any big money. It's before the dot-coms. You hear about these stories. There was no building he sold. There was no dot-com. I was there. He was about to start making money. They were screaming at him. And he said, it's true. This wasn't pie in the sky. You could make money in theory. They were about to give him the promotion. And he said, I want to go learn, and I can't afford to do it in America, and I'm moving to Eretz Yisrael. My mother, Yibalda M'chaim L'chaim, to her credit, was low maintenance and still is. And that's why he was able to do it. And he went to learn for 41 years. Yom V'Layla. He gave 2 shiurim in Eretz Yisrael. He moved to Rehovot because he couldn't afford Yerushalayim. He gave 2 shiurim before 7:30 a.m. with davening in between. And he had a Seder with the Rosh Hashiva, with the Rosh Chodesh Av, and a full day. I'm well aware most people aren't ready to do this, but the people who know him, which is anybody, Brooklyn or Muncie from that Tkufa, or from Eretz Yisrael, people now have to know that there is such a thing. It's almost a chad b'mina because there was no .com again, but he made a cheshbon. He was very disciplined, and he said, I think I could do it if I remain disciplined and I keep it low profile. When he went, he bought a bicycle instead of a car because it was expensive. He got bitten by a dog a few months later, so he bought a Toyota. That was the big... can you imagine the hasagas? So, the moral of the story is, for most people who are not ready to do that and can't do it for many, many reasons, if you want to hope, every Ben Torah and every wife of Ben Torah has a hope that whenever you can, whatever age that is, you're going to be doing it. I have this conversation with a lot of people all the time, and some people make a lot of money, some people not so much, but they all have that plan. It's gavaldik. But you got to exercise while you're working. And there's no patur that I'm working, and therefore I'm kaveh itim, and I got an hour here and a half hour there, and it's on the way there, on the way back, balachta baderech, it's a pasuk, and it's at lunch, and a guy came to me yesterday, I never heard this. He said, I worked for your father. He said, everybody seems to be claiming that these days. He said, no. I was in his department. I was directly under him. He trained me. I remembered him vaguely. I haven't seen him in a while. And he said, I used to bring him things all day to sign. How long does it take to sign a piece of paper? 5 seconds? 4 seconds? He said, every time I went in, it cost me 10 minutes. Because he took the paper, he signed it, and then he told me to sit down, and he told me a mahalach and the sugi he was holding in. I assume after a while he brought all the papers together. I would assume, otherwise. But, and it's the middle, my father had to make up that, it's the middle of a very pressurized day. But if you do that, then when you have the chance to learn more, it's really chal. So this fellow told me, and this part I had never heard. I never heard the first part with the signing either. He said, the last time I saw him in the office, it was a few days before Pesach that year. And I noticed, it's very unusual, he was with the file cabinets, he was moving things around, and he was organizing things. I asked him jokingly, you're cleaning for Pesach? See, he said, yeah, something like that. He didn't answer. He said, yeah, for Pesach, whatever, I'm cleaning for Pesach. 3 days later, he wasn't there anymore. I said, you worked for him. You didn't know he was leaving? He said, I couldn't figure out why he didn't tell me. I told him why I didn't tell him. Because the two people he had to tell, he told a few months earlier, and they were still giving him a rough time. And one of them, you might be able to figure out who this is, who has had a Baruch Hashem, a very nice size apartment, probably the biggest one in the entire Medina. Flew to Israel a few times to make him offers close. He's living there already a year or two. He made him an offer for Cyprus, for Turkey, for whatever you want. He said, no. I came here to learn. I was told that by his almana at the Beis Oval. He said, my husband was very fond of your father. He was very, very annoyed the last couple of years. Haladavarhu, there's an Avos HaTorah, but we all have to have this, whether you can actually move to Israel, whether you can stay in America and you can afford it. It's irrelevant. Discipline. Part of the discipline was Derech Agav, is he had somebody very close to him who was perplexed. He didn't look insulted. He just disappeared. He didn't know why. But usually when things are happening in your life, you want to tell people. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's okay, sometimes that's really not a good idea. So, no godless in the plane that I wasn't firing back emails all annoyed. I learned that you don't say anything unless you have to. You don't write anything unless you have to. And you just get it done. The second taiva, again, this is, he was very optimistic, always very besimcha. And you would think, okay, it's besimcha, he probably made $100 million, moved to Israel, what's not to be besimcha about? But he moved to Israel and he was learning that was the simcha. The money wasn't really the part of the story that people had clear, money or lack thereof. The second part was that he was sick for a while, and I try to visit whenever I can. Everybody in the shul notices, he waited for the day after Ben Azmanim. We finished giving Shaar, Leil Shavasa B'Tammuz. That's typical. I mentioned yesterday, he also gave me one day to take a hot shower, which after 10 days, 8 days, I was in Eretz Yisrael for 2 days. I sat in 4 places. 2 places in Eretz Yisrael, Lakewood and Muncie. And it's the summer. So I'll let you think about that. I'm not going to explain that now because we have no time. You should have a kasha on what I just said. So you can't take a hot shower during Shleishim. So what day did he leave me? The day was yesterday. I'll let you think about that, and you'll come up with the answer. We don't normally teach Hilchos Avelos Aninas, but I paskin these shilas. I deal with these shilas all the time, and they're very complex and aninas, and they're very shabayis. The basics, at least you have to know what the shilas are. Sam Sefer is a tshuva, and he says that the minig, somebody wrote him a letter. If it was a Shaila and Shiva, by the time I got to Sam Sefer 5 weeks later, it wasn't again. Mail moved very slow. And he starts the tshuva, it was Nikra, it was like a year or two later. He says, now that I'm unfortunately in this sugya, I'm going to write you a whole tshuva. What's pshat in that minig? You have to, Rabbanim have to know the basics, and Sam Sefer is the basic adar. I think the pshat is, of course, he knew everything I know 10 times over in the Shulchan Aruch backwards and forwards. If you're writing a tshuva Sam Sefer, or a tshuva Nadi B'Yehuda, you're writing a whole sugya be'in. That he didn't do until he was in the matzav. But for every shayla that I get, and I get a lot of shaylas in Hilchos because it's a gagal l'chayze ba'olam, it's always a bit of a pachad, but sometimes the shayla gives me the understanding that they didn't know to ask the other four because there was no yediyah, which is understandable, but it's important to know these things. And a case in point is that the second or third email is in the air. Afterwards, they felt bad. They sent it. They said, there's an Indian, you don't have to tell people. I said, that's not true. That's a very famous misconception. There's machlokes rishonim. Whether you can not tell an oval and pull him into a dance to the chasna. And there's a machlokes similarly, whether you have to tell him about aninas and he's violating Yisurim. And we paskin a split pasak, and a number of people mentioned to me, no, you don't have to tell him, it's not true, it's only by Avelis, not by Aninas. Aninas, he is a chiv to take care of the mace, that's why he pattern for mitzvahs. You must tell him, it's machlokes rishonim, Allah divrei amekel ba'oval. We don't say Allah divrei amekel ba'aninas. These are very important lumdisha points. I don't expect you to paskin these shaylas, but there are people who said, no, they have meisim where they did that. I said it was paskin wrong. You don't tell the guy, he's an Einan, he's supposed to be working on the crew, unless he has no shaykhs to it. Don't worry, we're not going to go into the Hilchos Avelos the whole night, but 30 of these come up in every Maisa. You're not expected to know the answers, but Layalenu, Malazan, it's something that at least you have to know there might be a Shaila. So I'm just noticing the bookends that the Chesed Elyon, my father never wanting me to interrupt anything and never wanting me to be bolted from any learning and using every opportunity to give me his time to learn. And the discipline that comes along with it. You have to navigate life and really not talk too much and say harbe. That's really the message here. Zev, you remember my father came in twice a year, sat right next to you. So yeah, the last time he was here was Corona. He was here for 5 months. After that, he didn't come anymore. So he wasn't. He was shvach. It's hard to travel, but. He was in Eretz Yisrael. He was going to be in Eretz Yisrael. Let me go into one more prat of a few of meisim that will tie into some of the shaylas, but it got me thinking. There is a mitzvah d'oraisa that we say twice a day. Shnatam levanecha. It's that 2 psukim by the Chiv Talmud is Dibarta Bam. Shnatam levanecha. As you all know, from the time of Rabbi Shua ben Gamla onwards, the old style was they were makayim the mitzvah d'oraisa, mitzvah by Yosef Shlucha v'shnatam v'necha. Shua ben Gamla noticed by his time that you read the Saderis, and it was already difficult in the time of the Tanaim. There's a lot going on politically. There were unfortunately a lot of Yisayimim. There were parents who were fathers who were Maratzim. The level of learning went down. There were people in business. Every time he took a trip, it was 7 months, and there were boys growing up and they didn't learn. This is Beferish in the Gemara, and that's why Shlomo Gamla made the takana of the yeshiva system, which ended up being in Europe for 1,000 years plus. In the town, the Rav would learn and would have a small kibbutz yeshiva, and then Chaim Volozhiner had to redo that and make an official yeshiva, because that wasn't getting done well. And now we're Zaycha in America to have yeshiva for everybody. You don't have to be a Mitzuyan. Volozhin can only take the top 0.01%. They couldn't afford it. Now, Baruch Hashem, can afford it or not, it's expensive. Everybody's there to be in yeshiva, mezivta. It doesn't cost that much, a few years of kailul before you even have to think about it. That's a tremendous, tremendous bracha. And the yeshivas are doing an excellent job by and large, despite whatever lashon hara you hear. Because I know, my shul, I have rabbeim, I have any people who are coming to visit and they're happy to support their sons-in-law. And the guys who are working a few hours in between, I'm not sure some of them how they're doing that. They know to learn quite well, and the shirim are kedabai because to their schus and the schus of the yeshivas. We have to realize what a bracha that is, but also understand the Achrayus, that we have to, therefore, not patter ourselves with a 20-minute a day. We can do it, and we are doing it. We just have to constantly raise the bar. So, Shinat Vanecha is underutilized. There is a klal mitzvah by Yisur Shluchas. We have yeshivas, you have good yeshivas doing a great job by and large. No system is perfect. Whenever the parents come to complain that the son's not getting enough attention, I tell them that there's some English expression about a squeaky wheel. Is there something like that? Squeaky door. It's your child, and you have to make noise without being an absolute nuisance. And I agree, they agree, the Manal agrees, the Shiva agrees. If we can make each class only 1 or 2 Talmidim, everybody would focus a lot better. But they're bursting at the seams. So I've told this to a number of people. All of a sudden they said, no, it's really working well. I said, if you just increase your donation by about $1 million or $2 million, we can create such yeshivas, and then if you want to retire, you can learn with your son directly. But it's a function of money. The function of money. There's the yeshiva in Muncie, and they made a klal, and the person put up the money for it. He said 22 per class, Yahar Vayavar, and then everybody Shemit. It's not the tiny of the other yeshivas. He funded it. Gavaldig. But you can't complain. And with 25, 30, and even 20, it's a lot for a Rebbe to handle. So just understand, these are big sugyas. I'm just mentioning that Agav, it deserves our support and tremendous covered. And I was once speaking to a group of Bachrim not long ago, a few weeks ago. You'll hear some of their shilas if we get to it. I told them their Rabbeim and the Rosh Yeshiva was sitting there. I said, your Rabbeim, I happen to know them personally. They could have been businessmen, lawyers. They could have been making a lot of money. Instead, they're here giving you a Messiah. So that's enough to have covered. I was insinuating that the yeshiva is not paying the Rabbeim so well. It wasn't a criticism. It's true. It's not the highest paying profession. So one of the Bachrim asked me in a sort of respectful way after the shir, he said, Mechatesi could have made a lot of money. I said, I knew that was coming. It's not muchuch. It's just that it's a serious nefesh. You're doing something, you know you're not going to make a lot of money. And overworked, underpaid, and they're 30, 35 Bachrim. So we have to support that. The criticism is misplaced because we're shooting the messengers. With all that said, everybody's maskim, there's a mitzvah deraisa of Shnanta B'Vanecha. So why is it underutilized? I think it could be utilized more. I mentioned it to my shver, who's a manal for 60 years, and he's retired in Lakewood. The only person I know, he's retired in Lakewood 4 times already. And this year he told me he's really retiring. That works for about a day. So Baruch Hashem, he used to be the manal here in the Mir, in Flatbush. You know who it is. So he told me, just if I mention this in a shir or a drasha, just remind everybody, if you do it when you're very tired after a long day, or you do it when you're not prepared and you're frustrated, you should not do it. And mitzvah yeshlucha doesn't apply over here. And it's a law of diminishing returns, which is spoken like a true manal. And of course, that's correct. But if you can do it with Ava and you make it fun and you make it, which is what I experienced, I'm sure I'm not the only one, then of course it's mitzvah Yosef Shlucha, which is why Avos Abanim, there is Avos and Banim. So I asked, on a few occasions, I asked one of the boys why he wasn't living with his father. He says, it's Banim Ubanim. I said, why is that? He said, my father, comes home, it's a long day, and whatever, it's sometimes fireworks. I said, okay, we'll keep it Banim Ubanim. He was living with his chavusa. So you got to figure out each time, but put it on the agenda. There is such a musag. Okay, let's go to the first part of the sugya, even though that was very much part of the sugya, just the chizuk. This I have on one of the USBs. I think there are only a couple of them on the table. You can help yourself. This USB, you can't tell by size. This has over 3,000 shirim. This has whatever it says on the box. They're both $10. They're free if you want to take it and you don't have money on you and you can't Zelle. And you're going to listen to it and put it in your computer and give it to somebody else. It's for the Abatzas Torah. It just costs money. It's not a money maker. There's one on Hilchos Taka. I'm going to touch upon a brand new Shiloh, which was not Nagea by and large till America. Still not nogea to most people, but it's becoming more nogea. And I was asked to speak about this by a gvir or two who were really b'nai Torah, chashuv b'nai Torah. If they're going to come and ask me the shaila, they're just going to cost them money. And to ask such a shaila, I'll get to the shaila in a minute. Let me just go over the basic, which a lot of people still don't know. And they have a kasha because they want to know why the sukkah is called meiser. What's the shear meiser? That wasn't a ridiculous question. What's the shear meiser? Well, yeah, that's what you thought it was. The Machaber brings down from the Gemara, from Aser to Aser, the shear is a chaimish. Machaber spells it out. The shear is a chaimish. Then he says, "B'di'evid, if you get meiser and you can't afford more, that's a chiddush nifla to a lot of people." I guess they never saw Hilchos Taka. There are scores of shirim on that USB, and we go through this very carefully with all the rights. Chavetz Chaim has his famous sefer Avos Chesed, the first modern Staka sefer, and he points this out very clearly because Mechaber says. Then he points out that the Iker Staka is to Bnei Torah who are also poor and need help. He's got a Zakas Torah, and he brings Rayas and Gemaras and Psukim. That it's Shevet Levi, and whoever is acting like Shevet Levi. It's also not well known. You have to take care of Yisrael Manos also, but you have to know where the Iker thrust of the Staka is. So the shear is chaimish. Okay, chaimish is after federal, state, local taxes, not real estate taxes. I'm not going to explain why. If you want to hear a lot of screaming and yelling, it's not recorded. That's why I do it on Shabbos. I went back now for the third time to cover the parts of Hilchos Taka we didn't cover in the first two Gilgulim right now. As of 2 weeks ago, I wasn't here last Shabbos. And Baruch Hashem, we have a very nice crowd of Bnei Torah. Some of them are big Bali Staka, others are trying, and there's a lot of screaming and yelling. They want to know, what about the real estate tax? It's higher in Muncie, I guess. Yeah, so there's a chilik, and it's not included. Real estate tax are regular living expenses. You're choosing to live in a house. You can live in a rented apartment. As a matter of fact, some people can afford it more. Just do that because they don't have to fix anything. They don't have to mow the lawn, and that's a living expense. Lamaisa, so it's 20% off. You don't lower the basis with the real estate tax. You do with the regular taxes that have nothing to do with the amount of money you make, and it has to do with the amount of money you make, meaning the stuff that's the karga. Ramosha makes this whole equation that if they're taking off the top, where they take off the top and you pay it in April, the only difference, that's money you never see, as opposed to the living expenditures like the real estate tax. Okay, so after you're left with whatever you're left with, so 20% sounds like a large number. But the Chaber says, I don't know how many people did this, but Chaber puts it down. The Achrayus and the Daf don't mention they lived in Europe, but nobody had any money. And they just pass it without comment. That's the official benchmarks. 20%, 10%. If you can't afford that, then it's whatever you can afford. And between 10 and 20, it's not all or nothing. I have people doing 15%, 13%. They're working their way up. It's tremendous chus, and if it's a Hazakas Torah, it's as we'd say, over the top. That's the Iker Mitzvah, as Chavetz Chaim said. And then they made a Takana D'Rabbanan. Midaraisa, you can give, if there's a need, if there's a tzarech in your town, 30, 40, 50, 60%, as long as you have what to live on. The Achashochan explains this. He doesn't often give Hakdamas, and Hilchos Taka gives Hakdama. And he says the Din D'Oraisa is whatever the tzarech is, you give, if you can afford it. They weren't getting letters from all over the world. They weren't having these various online things, which are Gavaldic people are giving, and whatever the tzarech was. And if you were the Gvir, you gave more. In Usha, they made a takana that the Yavaz is Ayavaz Yesim Echemish, which I don't want to hit you with too many coolers tonight, but Chavetz Chaim has no less than 6 coolers on that he holds on coolers. He holds his push it. But Chiddush is not a low plug. The Gzeir is the Yavaz is Ayavaz Yesim Echemish. Why did they make the Gzeir? The Achashochan said Usha took place after the takana. Sanhedrin already was Nigla, and they were Usha. And Yidden are so halig that they were giving money like they still had it before the war, before the Churban, and they really couldn't afford it. There was a danger that they would go bankrupt. So they had to make a takana to legislate the Yidden shouldn't give so much because there were so many nitzrachim due to the Churban. They just felt bad. So they had to legislate. That's a tremendous testimony to the godless of Klal Yisrael. And they made the takana. So Chavetz Chaim mentions that if you're giving to Hazakas Torah straight, that's Yisachar Zvulun, whether it's officially or not, it's a different story. But he assumes it is if you're to make an official one, and they didn't put a cap on that because that's a business deal. Fascinating. That's most of the tzedakah. And if it's a Gvir Adir, or a person who really made a budget, doesn't have to worry about it at all, there's no Gzeir Shemi Yane. If you're doing it for Kapar Savanis, he gives a whole long list of Eterim. And most of us at Tehran can be used today. So people, when they come to, and they Baruch Hashem, they're giving chaimish. There are many more people than for the last 2,000 years who are giving chaimish because the people can afford it. And they come and ask me, what if I go over? Am I going to be over in the takana? I said, I have so many heterim, I really wouldn't worry about it. So what's the bulk of your staka? I said, yeshiva's kailim. I said, it's fine. Not his tuition, his alma maters. So, Heilige Yidden, it's unbelievable. Going back to the story we started with, so why isn't there an Achrayus for the klal to stay, assuming my father wasn't making any big money, but he was making a panasa, and he would give whatever I remember on Sunday, people would come, and yeshivas would walk in, and he would give what he can, so what's the head to the leave? So the answer is, you have no chiyuv to go to work to support yeshivas, you have no chiyuv to stay working, if you're a bar hochi to learn. Again, the exercise dogma is you got to be real with yourself that it's not 90% more golf and tennis or the like. These are cheshbonis that everybody has to assess and reassess. It's not always resigning from your job. It's cutting back hours. As you all know, there's ein l'davar safe. If you spend more hours in the office, at least we think you can go after more deals and make more money. But there is some equation. It's all b'yad Hashem, of course. But ein l'davar safe, especially today. So that decision, whether you're leaving legamre or part thereof, is a decision that everybody has to reassess every once in a while. And there's a din v'cheshbon. And I have this conversation, Baruch Hashem, have the conversation with people all the time. They make an appointment, we go over the financials, we go over his learning schedule. This has to be done. Elmo's coming soon. And they tell me, well, yeah, I can cut this back, but then the yeshiva is going to take a hit. So if it's a guy who taka is going to learn an extra half hour and the vacation season is going to start 5 times a year, I taka tell him, stay in the office. He'll call in for the year. If he's not, and he's really serious, then there's what to discuss. That has to be, if the schus from this year is that if we walk out and people listening to reassess it, it's not, that has to be done for everybody. Nobody expects people to resign and run to a place 6,000 miles away that's the cheapest place to live and have the schus of Eretz Yisrael also. There are many reasons why many people can't do that, but you could do part thereof. So we have Chaimish, we have Meiser, and what was the shaila asked to me by this Gvir who walked into my office, unsolicited. I use that word bedavka. You would think I asked him for a donation for some yeshiva. I don't usually go collecting. That's a chesaron probably, but what did he ask me? He said, there's a very important thing that was never on the agenda before, and I think you have to bring it up a rabbim, and there are 2 groups of people who are not going to like even bringing it up. One is all the people who say halavai by me, and should be nogea. Okay, that's most people. It's not what I am going to mention when I tell you what the shaila is. It's nogea to more than 1% of the population. Still a miyut, but it's better than it ever was in this department. What's the shaila? Shaila was, I see a problem. He starts with the shaila that he asked me. He says, should you take Meiser and Chaimish on a refi? Anybody here in real estate? So I mentioned this, if you heard the screaming and yelling from Muncie. So I brought this up about 5 weeks ago, and this current, each Gilgal V'Sugya takes about 6 months. So I'm going to give up my Chaimish. I brought up the refi, and I don't blame him. I had an accountant there. He's mamish, a gadol from the accountants. I think he's a PhD in accounting. I knew he wouldn't even hear what I'm saying. See, he raises his hand, he says, a refi is a loan. I said, I'm quite aware of that. He says, the IRS considers a loan. I said, I'm quite aware of that. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Many, and if you understand how the monetizing of a building should work, this is a business model that Congress is always trying to undo, because they think that people in real estate are just getting wealthier, and we're treating it as a loan, so they don't charge tax on it. That's great. Any tax loophole that's legal, grab it. It's a shot on good Jewish geld. If you don't, that has nothing to do with Meiser and Chaimish. The model is you keep borrowing it. The expectation is you're never going to return it. We hope the building keeps on increasing in value. Sometimes it goes in the wrong direction. And then, I'm afraid, you could probably take it off the stucco ledger because then it might end up being a loan. Most of the time, that's not what happened. And the bank doesn't want it back. They're making money off of you. You don't plan on giving it back. They don't want it back. If it happens, it happens. Then you'll retrofit it. This is pretty pashut. Not a davar muskim, but many people. Shlomo Zalman wrote a tshuva on this years ago, and he said if that's the intention, then it's not a loan, even if the IRS considers it a loan. Of course, not a loan. They're taking out the whole salary, every couple of years and living off it and living nicely. Of course, it's not a loan. So he told me, this fellow sitting at my table says, I take off Meiser and Chaimish, Baruch Hashem, I can afford to. A lot of people think that the IRS says it's a loan, and therefore it's a loan, and they're never taking off Meiser. So I said, they're pulling, could be millions of dollars over the years out of the building, and they never paid Meiser. So when are they going to pay it? I'd be as gold tzedek. So I said, so what's your shaila? You understood I was going to answer you, you should take off Meiser and Chaimish on a refi. Anybody who doesn't, they have something to rely on, but it's a better system if you can afford it. And so I said, so what's your shaila? Why'd you come here? You knew that already. He said, well, I wanted to re-ask that anyway, just so I could tell my friends. But what's your real shaila? What's bothering you? He says, what's bothering me is that the model of any business, any real estate business, or any other business in America, if you're a guy, is to grow it and grow it and grow it and grow it and grow it. And when do you cash in? Then everybody's made to, if you sell the building, you pay Meiser. Chaimish? Yeah, everybody's made to that. So when do you do that? No, what's the answer? If it's not negated to you, you know somebody like this, what's the answer? It's one word, begins with an N and ends with an R. Did I get that spelling right? Never, of course not. It's a great tax event if you leave this world after 190. Ramesh didn't like 150, didn't like 190. I verified the story twice. My Adim is from David's Anikel. And I couldn't believe the story. I still don't understand the story. Ramesh once had to fill out forms for the government. He was getting, Ramesh didn't have any money. And they needed, he was in his 80s or something. He needed some government help or something. They wanted, whatever they wanted to get. And it asked on it, how long do you expect to need the services? Every other mice, that's unbelievable. I verified it. I just don't understand what the pshat is. And he wouldn't sign it. I said, why did he sign it? Pick a number way in extra. Pick 120. He says, you can't be Mamayat Brocha. You all know there's a Jewish expression, Yiddish, English, Hebrew, whatever language you speak, that we use 120 as the benchmark. He apparently didn't hold that was a minig. And he says, I'm not putting down a number. They gave up the program, which was expensive. So we try not to limit. I'm not saying there must be another side to the story, but we don't limit. So after 190 or 10,000, however old he's going to be, leaves this world, and they never paid Meiser and Chaimish. And he's giving it to his kids. The guy was like up in arms about it. He said, we're dealing for the first time in history with a lot of money. And even if it's not 100 million, billions, if it could be negated to somebody who has 2 houses or 3 houses, it's a lot of money. And if you're not taking off on a refi, certainly it's not going, and even if you are, it's not. I said, that's an excellent point. That's really the minig? I don't own these buildings. I wouldn't know. He said, that's the minig. We just grow it and grow it and grow it. We live off the refis, and we just grow it. And when's the Misa bill? Never. It's mañana, but that means never. That's a good kasha. I don't think the kasha has ever been asked. I think in Vilna and in Rodin, they didn't have such issues. Libi Yomerli. I had some Gvirim in Europe, but Haladover, I was impressed that he was thinking along the line, like, what are we doing for Klal Yisrael? So he said, of course, on the other hand, he wasn't finished yet. So on the other hand, maybe if I tell him that no, you should keep growing it, because if you keep growing it, then they're going to be able to be helping out all the yeshivas. It's such big virum. I said, that's a great svara. The shaila is at what point? They would have a lot more money if you're... So, this is not only nogea if you own buildings and you're a gvir out there. It's nogea to anybody. How much are you saving? You know the famous Meiser, B'Slal Salanter, saw a young man running somewhere in Poland in the market day. He was running and he was a zara. He said, where are you running? He said, I got to make panasa and I want to give some to my children. I want to leave some to my children. He said, I remember your grandfather. He said the same thing. And never stops. So everybody's always running and building. And so you understand, the two groups of people don't like his question he warned me about are the kids, understandably, and the people who are saying halavai by me. But it's not only nogea if it's a $10 or $100 million. It's nogea to everybody in some format. And there's got to be a formula which is not just buying into the Goyish American model, which I thought was fascinating that he brought up, and I don't think the shaila has been really vetted. I think it has to be discussed and dealt with on whatever level you're holding in. listened to a Shiloh from a Bacher. It's very honest. We have we have growing Bachurim. The yeshiva is doing a good job, and also I was impressed by the honesty. He didn't sign his name. I speak to Bachurim and adults, and anybody from the age of usually 12, 13 to 190. What do we settle at? 2,000. And I asked them, I said, I want to know what's on their minds. Just send me in. I just sifted out 2 or 3 of the best ones because this one speaks so much to a mahalach in life. With money, but in Gashmias in general. So this is his Lashon. Does everything we do as a Yid have to be for the sake of enhancing our Yiddishkeit, like playing sports for mental health outlets you can learn better? You can understand the shmuzim he's getting in yeshiva, right? Why can't we just do it for the sake of the sport if we enjoy it? Is that honest or is that honest? Like he just wants to get into the game. Does he have to think about his ruchnias? Now it's very hard to pitch if you think about it concise. There's some people who can multitask, I'm sure. So he's not saying he's actually even near doing this. He just wants to know, like he just feels a lot of pressure. So is that really part of Yiddishkeit? Now, but I didn't tell him. I answered the question in real time. I'm giving you the very short version. I had a grown adult who was a very sophisticated fellow who was, I would term him a Ben Torah at the beginning of the conversation. I wasn't so sure at the end. You'll see. I'm not mentioning names. A good guy, nice guy, and he was medactic by mitzvahs, keeps all the mitzvahs. He once asked this shaila to me, but he didn't ask it as a shaila, he didn't write it in because it wasn't yeshiva. It was a remark he made. He said, I don't know, I'm hearing a lot of from a raid, he tells me. A number of years back, but it wasn't 50 years ago. I'm hearing a lot of raid about what he's about to ask about. It says Beferish the Messias Hasharm from the first page to the last page, by the way. The Messias Hasharm was written for Klai Yisrael, not for Lamed Vavniks. Maybe some stuff at the end, you got to work your way out, but it gets the basic rules. He said he's hearing a lot that our entire existence, all the kaichas we have, all the money we have, all our time is all Meshuvah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he says he doesn't understand. He grew up thinking, you got to give your meiser. So I was going to correct him. It's really chaimish, but I didn't want to get into that. You got to give your meiser, and you got to be kaveh eatim, which I'm doing, and I daven the minyan 3 times a day. He's a good guy. He says, and the rest, the other 80, 90% is my time. I looked at him. I'm not so from myself. I looked at him like, what planet are you from? If you tell me you're not holding there and you can't play ball lishma and you can't eat lishma and you can't sleep lishma, okay, that I understand. But to tell me you don't understand the musig and there's like a new chumrah they have, that you're here on earth to do avodas Hashem only, that was not, he wasn't saying it was a chiddush to him. He says he heard it and he doesn't believe it. He thinks that's way out of proportion. I looked at him, I usually don't have to look for too many words. I looked at him, I was dumbfounded, I didn't know where to start. No one's going to raise their hand now. But if you bump into somebody who doesn't know this basic aside of why we're here, well, he certainly didn't even do a first reading of a Messias Hasharm, which is, again, the basic of Side, Sharish Avaida, Messias Hasharm. It's all the same. Anybody want to raise their hand and tell me that they didn't know that? It's not good for Shidduchim. Is that Pashut? There are people, they're a from person, should think not whether he's doing it, whether he's holding there. I'm asking it to fool himself. And there's no mituch shalol lishma balishma by playing basketball. I think it's only by Talmud Torah mitzvahs. I'm not even asking him to start doing it shalol lishma. But you have to have heard of the musug, or else how are you going to grow? You're never going to be able to figure out how much recreation you need, how much downtime you need, how many vacations you need, if you think that the 80% belongs to you already. How are you going to figure that out? This is not... So I sort of, when I recovered, I sort of told him, I said, no, that Yesod is very basic to all of Yiddishkeit. And I always like the good news. The guy was in his late 40s. Said, the good news is you got many more years to live. We'll have to think of a number because, 10,000 doesn't resonate with people. And it's a good thing you heard this now, not when you're 109. But, okay, Rabbi Kiva heard these things at 40 also. But, Haladeverhu? I'm talking to a person who learned, and he thought, and he's medaktek. He doesn't miss minyan. That's great. He's kaveitim, He gives stuff, everything is, he knows Shulchan Aruch. And he thinks that that's what he gives to Hashem, and the rest he's here to enjoy himself. I'm not getting any pushbacks. I assume everybody here knew that. So maybe tell your friends. But it's like the basic is said Yiddishkeit. And it affects everything. And here's a case in point. The sugyas that we give because of the great credit to our yeshivas I mentioned before. So we have Night Seder, which is one sugya with Marmar Kamitz. We have Shabbos afternoon, different times of the week. Night Seders, we just ended Shavuos with Tammuz. I let them out early. I'm happy to say a lot of them said, why are we stopping now? I said, because like Elul's coming and I need to prepare the next year. It's good to be asked that rather than having them ask why we went so long. And the sugya we're in now is manim. I kept threatening for years. For 3 years, I've been at tefillah, but all the sugyas are tefillah. It's not beer, tefillah, some musar also. Zmanim is quite a sugya. So I kept threatening because I wanted to be a mashab myself to actually do it. But people get very nervous about it. But everybody wants to know about it. You can go through life. Everybody's heard of Rabbi Tam and the Gra and the Motzei Shabbos, and we live with this every day. And the Kriya Shema, nobody knows a clue where all these things come from. It's a slightly complex sugya, but Baruch Hashem, because I kept reminding them, they kept asking me about it, we finally got to it. We're in it now for 4 months. And we're going through Shas Manias, Rabbeinu Tam. So the Gra, still machlokes way passing like the Gra Rabbeinu Tam, vast, tremendous differences between it affects everything in the day. Like Kriya Shema, Shkia, and Tzeis, and Shabbos. And a lot of good Sfarim written on it lately, and there are some Sfarim that claim that the Gra sounds like this in the Gemara. Shaila is it's pretty light out, so I'm warning you. I'm not saying we go with this, but there is a bona fide shita that holds that it's 4.37 degrees below the horizon. The sun gets depressed every night. Nothing to do with unhappiness. It is not a complicated word to use. You just got to know, the world is, everything is spinning and the galaxy is spinning. And so the sun sets and Shaila, what we think we know now, we're pretty sure, is that it sets and you don't see it and it's getting depressed, meaning it's going down. And darkness is measured the easy way in degrees. How many degrees is it below the horizon? It's going to get darker and darker. What's the minimum shear? This is 4 months of Aveda. I'm giving you the one. What's the minimum shear that I've seen that anybody even entertains in the Gaon? The Rabbi Tam is way later. Child is in 72 or 72 converted to degrees, which might be later. Ramesha says maybe it's earlier, but Ramesha goes to 8.5 degrees. He says it's around 46 to 51. He holds that Rabbeinu Tam. Anyway, so some sheets as a whole, it's as little. This is the most mekel shita, which we don't go with Lochel Meiser on Shabbos. 4.37 degrees depression. It's pretty light out then. I've been measuring this stuff. Munsey's great for this. We take pictures from the window. We're upstairs in the share room. I got gorgeous sunsets if you want to see. Everything's uploaded on the website and all the shiurim are there. And we have more coming. We're up to a great sunset where you see a couple of stars, but one of them is Venus and it's not a star really, and it's very light out. Okay, so I'm not dining on the sheep. That's the earlier shita. This is pushit what I'm telling you, and I'm not here to attack anybody's panasa. They're good people. In the last few years, there's been a new exotic place on earth. We're running out of them where people can go on vacation. This is all a function of money. Good people. This is, again, the people who know they're here, Meshubah Tokash Baruch Hu, and they're taking their 5-day vacation to relax so they can learn better. Let's assume they know all that. And they know it, they're doing it, they have it in mind, don't have it in mind, but at least they know it. So we're opening up new venues. There aren't many left. That's why people are so excited about this. I think they had an IPO recently where one of the guys who might have a somewhat Jewish name, but unfortunately is not Jewish, made $1 trillion or something like that. So he has plans to settle the moon, and we've been hearing about this for decades. Not Mars, but I think they gave up on Mars. Don't tell anybody. But do you understand, just to understand the mentality over here, why they want to go to the moon and Mars? Still plenty of room on Earth. He said, no, there are too many problems on Earth. We're going to do it again. I didn't ask him, as I didn't spoke to him. I wanted him to ask, who are you going to bring? Humans, right? With the same kinna and sinna and the guy. Well, I'm not sure. Why don't you fix it here? It's such a mussar. Like, we're going to go to the moon, have a reset, and no one's going to do any stealing. We're going to put them in jail. Okay, no one's going to do any stealing. No one's having any kinna and sinna. They're all going to be very frum. Okay. Lamaisa, there are people, half jokingly, but as you see, society moves quickly. I don't know what's a joke anymore. They might be planning a Pesach program on the moon or on Mars. And you'll understand what I have to comment on that just based on this Shaila. You cannot go into space, al pi halacha, let alone Mars. I'm well aware that Ilan Ramon, Allah Shalom, asked these Shailas. He was Maserati somewhat, but all the Chuvas are written to him. He went to space, and if you remember from Flatbush, I gave a shiur the week before Nebuch. This is recorded in the Bereshit series. You can pick it up at the table. I'm not making this up. This is 20 years ago, 22 years ago. And I said, it's not so posh. You can't bring a Sefer Torah into space. You're not allowed to move a Sefer Torah for people. He wanted to do it because he was proud of his Judaism. It came from a good place. Somebody told him it was mutter. I don't know why. He says, dangerous. Nebuch, this is the Tuesday night Chumash here. Right? Tuesday night, I think? The next week, I was giving Shaar Nebuch Hesped. The whole thing blew up with the Sefer Torah. That wasn't the biggest problem. The biggest problem is all the Chuvas are written. When do you do mitzvahs in orbit? Every hour and a half, you have to put on tefillin again, the Shabbos, and the whole day, and and there are all sorts of jokes about that. It's not a joke. You can't go to a place you can't do mitzvahs, period. All the theories, they have it's very strong, they have this or that. In theory, it wasn't against them. You keep from Cape Canaveral, you keep from here, you keep Eretz Yisrael time. All that theory, you're putting yourself in a matzav where it's a suffix, where you can do mitzvahs deraises. It's usher. I've told this to many people, they look crushed, like you wanted to be an astronaut when you grew up? No, he just wanted to go on when it gets cheap enough to be on the tour. So we're looking for places. So getting back to Earth. So what's the new venue? No one's going to raise their hand. No one's going to volunteer. Thank you. Very good. So I hear Leicester's just 3-4 years old. I don't know. They found a spot. And it's probably very scenic. And then they start misquoting Rosh Chodesh Av. Rosh Chodesh Av says it's a chiv d'oraisa to go to Iceland. He didn't say the first thing that's the most overquoted Rosh Chodesh Av ever. You can now see pictures of it, and you can see a video of it, and you don't have to go and save yourself time. But that's not the Ikar problem. There are a couple of months a year. I have a chart if anybody wants to know when to plan. Wonderful people making the tour, and I'm not here to criticize the people who are living there. They ask their own shailas. There's nothing discussed. It's not a chumrah, just a case in point. It wouldn't come up in terms of pushback I got. I don't mind. I have now once a week people sending me ads for Iceland that they're preparing tours. They want me to be mecha. I said, I made my mecha in Shaar. It was recorded in triplicate on 4 networks. I can't make more of a mecha. Well, this is another one. Okay. There are times, a couple of months a year during the tourist season, May, June, where the sun doesn't get anywhere near depressed to 4.37. That's the most Mekel Shita. There's no night, period. There are places, even anything above the 60-second parallel has this problem. What? No, that's when you go up to, they didn't get to the North Pole, the next place the program comes up. Alaska is a normal country, like it's nice and you could, it's not that cold. They go in the summer, you put on a windbreaker, and you're good to go. You can't say Kriya, you have a mitzvah d'oraisa Kriya Shema, and you can't be Yetzi that mitzvah. No, I'm talking about when there's no night. The sun, it gets darkish, it doesn't get to 4.37, and that's most Mekel Shita. This is Batik Menusa, I gave 3 weeks this year, you can hear it live, or sort of live. It's Pushut. It's just the latest example. And I'm getting, so they come with the most interesting questions. How can it be if there's any place on earth I can't see Niflas Aberi? And they're misquoting Rosh Chodesh Av. I said, just as a small similar dover, the latest one, last week, somebody asked me, is there places on earth that Jews can't live? I said, that's a chiddush to you? Did you ever wonder why Hashem made it 90 below zero in the North Pole? Like, I understand what they're thinking. Like, look at the world. Of course, there's slight ramazim in the Bria that Hashem doesn't want us to live there. It's almost not inhabitable. And there are loads of truth on St. Petersburg, which is as high as it gets, because my Kriya Shema sometimes is 6:30 in the morning. But of course, it didn't help much. The Russian Empire didn't join the world clocks, and they didn't change their clock yet. It was very early. The truth is in the Pre-Yitzchak. That's a Vitzla Petterberger. He was the Rav. As the truth of Yosef Chaim Zanifel, their truth is on this, but that wasn't above the thing. It just made it very inconvenient. And there are places in London, all the places in Scotland and in England and Ireland are difficult. They're all doable, depending on the Shita. The Moshe would hold 8.5. It's much safer. They only go to 6, but they go above 4, 4.5, say 5. Iceland, you're landing in the airport. It doesn't. And the other places, anything in the 60, if you're planning a vacation, just take out a map, there's latitude and longitude lines. I'm just giving you the one mile 60-second parallel. If you're above that, you're in the wrong place. And somebody called me and said, no, the Starcade's printing articles, and they talked about it, and they said you should be Yetzi when it's as close to midnight as possible. I picked up the phone. These are chaverim of mine. I picked up the phone. They're very good at Zmanim. I said, somebody misquoted you that you said you can say it there. I said, no. I said, you shouldn't go there. Of course you shouldn't go there. If you're there and you're stuck, or you're not business, you have no choice, then say it as close to the darkest point in time. So I said, I have a different idea, which he said, I'm going to incorporate that in the next article. We had a long discussion recently because I thought maybe I was missing something. I said, you could say it, but I'll explain in a minute why you can't. If you wait till after it gets to the lowest it's going to get to, let's say 3.5 degrees, night never came before those. When it goes the other way, it's now, that was chatzais, and now it's alois. B'diavad, you could say Kriya Shema after alois, but the Mechaber says beferish only if you're an honest. So everybody was cheering, it's gavaldik! So we have a heter, that's even better than the other one's a suffix. So I said, did you miss the word einus? So he said, no, all my friends are going. I mean, peer pressure is peer pressure, but einus? You're paying money to go on vacation? The answer is, going back to our first point, is that somebody, after hearing this, would never, if you paid him $1 million, ever go to a place where there's no Abra Minim, where there's no tefillin. We're talking about a mitzvah. They said it's an usr. I said, I paskin shaylas. I don't use the word usr. It's a bittul aseh. When I say the word usr, it's a bittul aseh. Would you go to a place where you know you're going to miss a day at tefillin and not take Abra Minim? They said, chalila. So I said, where did Kriya Shema become mashed potatoes? I don't understand. What? So Kriya Shema, now there must be an AC, you say it, and then they start quoting this article, you say the darkest point. They said that because they had no choice. It's Bein Hashmashis. This is, and I was just so surprised. It's so pashut that you should look for a vacation, but do it Lashma, not Lashma, half Lashma. If you're going to a makom where you can't keep mitzvahs bivados, that's a telltale sign that you're not even thinking of doing something as part of your Avodas Hashem. You hold that this 80% is yours, and mitzvahs don't have a lot to do with it. That's a problem. So the good news is they sent me all the tour packages. They sent me. I'm very, very familiar now. If anyone wants to go to Iceland, I can let you know what's coming. But the good news is July, August, September, we're clear. Till next May, depending on the city. Just look for the 60-second parallel. So the biggest chiddush is a few weeks ago, somebody said that they're now planning one. I couldn't make this up. They're planning one. This is real. I'm not here to attack the people. They're probably good from people. They don't even know there's a shayla. And then the second level is going to be, no, there's got to be a heter. Yeah, there's a heter. Misafik, maybe the yetzi, a suffix deraisa, and you're putting yourself in. If I gave you a suffix lulav and a suffix esrog, would you go near it? Of course not. So I got to go on vacation, and I've been to the other places already. The next one is, no, anybody, you guys aren't up on it. Some slow-moving crowd. What? Close, but it's the other direction. Right near the South Pole, they're having a ship that tours the gorgeous icebergs. I don't know, that sounded familiar from somewhere. I didn't like the way it sounded familiar. But they go to Venezuela, something like that, for Shabbos, or some country near there. I forget which one, not Venezuela, something further south. And then they embark from there on a 4-day tour. So I was hoping, I have a lot of globes and maps in my house by now. And it didn't take me more than 10 seconds to check it. It's worse than Iceland. They have a daf yomi, it's clock kosher. You just can't be Yetzi Kriyashma. So, just say, it's, people just don't know. But I don't mind they don't know. But once you hear it, that there's any Pesach to say, no, it's a suffix, but there are sheets of the hakol, ba'inus, and it's an einus because I got to experience Niflas Abere and the icebergs, and I got a ship that can't be penetrated by any iceberg, and we're good to go. Rahman Litzlan, I'd be scared to go on such a tour for other reasons also, but that's nothing to do with the sugya. It's a shayla how you approach your Torah mitzvahs. It's not an obstacle course. You're trying to avoid things. We're looking for opportunity, and we are meshubid Baruch Hashem. Hashem and His rachamim made us meshubid to use all our kelim, all our keiches, all our money, all our time, and allowed us to have downtime, allowed us to take vacations, allowed us to sleep, and built it in. Good food on Shabbos and Yantiv, all that's about plenty of Gashmias. Shaila is what the focus is. So this Choshva Bacher wants to know, is this really a thing or not? So I told him, what was his problem? He told me, I didn't read the whole thing, but he said that it's affecting his ruchnius. He feels too much pressure. I said, at the young age of 17, if you feel you're not ready to concentrate on that yet, then don't, and just play the game. And your zchus, I said, but on the chaver you can work on? He says, yeah, that you can work on during the game. I said, why don't you pass the ball? He said, that he hears, that he's going to try. I said, that's a big thing. You might have tied it to me, which you didn't. Why should I give him the covet? I can get the covet. The answer is, so once in a while you could shoot. You got to learn to pass the ball. And if you're not ready for doing this, so you can learn better and be relaxed, then that's fine. But understand there's a concept and don't negate the concept. One more thing, but we're late. Usually booking, you have 80, 90 minutes, I don't know. Okay, just one more thing. I have a chart for Iceland over here, but you can, just a 60-second parallel. And when you go down south, you'll check out Antarctica and the icebergs. It's a bigger issue. One more thing in terms of even when you're hurting, you have to understand, which I think Shmir Salushin has really gotten a lot of good press in the last few decades. And this was the other shayla that stood out from one of the fine Bachurim in our fine Mesiftas. Our Mesiftas are light years ahead of anything that's going on in public school. You're probably wondering why you even have to say that. So never push it. You'll understand in 10 seconds. Question is, if someone is being bullied, how can he go about telling his Rebbe if one of the conditions of the Elis is that you need it to be purely L'Shem Shamayim? It's an excellent question. It's not the first time I received the question. It's not gay in yeshiva. It's not gay. Anytime you're telling on somebody you need help, it could be a family matter and you're talking to your shver about your shviger or vice versa, or you're talking to your wife about it comes up a million times a year, I hope, not a day. And the Chavetz Chaim makes it quite clear, and he has the Ber Ma'am Chaim, if you can't do it to Allah, somebody calls you for information or shtiduchim, and you never like the guy anyways, your first heter to finally talk Lashon Hara, and it's a mitzvah. So Chavetz Chaim says you got to do it Lishma, and if you can't do that, you got to think about it, learn some Musar, purify your neshama, and then say Lishma. So his question simply is, it's not an easy answer. His question is, I was bullied by this guy. I really have time. I was hurt. Hurts his self-esteem. I was hurt by him, and I'm finally speaking up because I'm timid. That's why I'm getting bullied, or whatever the reason was. And I want to tell the Rebbe, but I learned in Shmir Salashin, you got to do it Lishma. He says, I maybe can do 51%, maybe. I said, what's your tell us? I just want him to leave me alone, which is clear to Ellis, and he's getting battered. Whether it's a verbal, whether it's whatever form it's taking. So what's the din? So we're out of time. So there's a diak from the Chavetz Chaim. Chavetz Chaim does say when a person's getting hurt and he's really reaching out for help, he has to have his ikar kavana, lishma for the te'elis. And I think the Chavetz Chaim said that because it's very human to have tinus in the guy. And you can't say over to the Rebbe that you can't exaggerate, you still have the other conditions. You can't exaggerate, you can't make up things, you can't, gotta say it like it is, let the Rebbe decide, and you can't suggest punitive damages and like we should flog him at recess. You can't start suggesting, because that might get into Nakama territory. So you have to keep it away and let the Hanhala member deal with it, or the parent, or whoever is dealing with the Shaila. But to expect human beings to be 100% l'shem shemayim, get no satisfaction that the guy is going to get some musar, I think the Chavetz Chaim is already assuming that that's too tall an order. That's a kula. You should try to learn musar and do it 100%. But this is an example where I think he's referring to roiv, a strong roiv. You really have to work it, do the best you can, and then you can report it, but you got to be careful because before you say it, you got to set yourself up. I'm not going to exaggerate. I'm not going to get too emotional. Let's state the facts. Tell us is I want the guy out of here, and he has a right to protect himself. And it was very, very heartwarming. I was at a chasna recently. I'll close with this story, but I'll get to this. A guy comes over to me. It's a couple years back, actually. A guy comes over to me. He must be in his 80s. And he pointed out, he says that Raman, that yeshiva is here. He said his name. We'll call him Rabbi Schwartz. It's all the taiva. I can't really say the name, but he was in the yeshiva with me in Mesifta. This story took place in the 1950s. Weren't too many Mesiftas then. And he said, I saw him here. I haven't seen him in 50, 60 years. Do you know who he is? I said, yeah, he's my shvager's father. Well, you can figure it out if you start doing the research now. And I said, why don't you go over him yourself? He said, he's not going to recognize me. Can you bring me over? So I bring you over. So walking over, going through the crowd, and I asked him, why do you want to see him? He said, he saved my life. I saved your life? What did he do? He says, Maisa Shahaya, I was a 9th grader, and I was small and scrawny. I'm looking at him in his 80s. He's small and thin, let's call it. So I can picture the scene. And Mesiftas like this one, sometimes freshies get, in the best of places. It was a good yeshiva. And he said I was getting picked on really bad. I was getting bullied. And it wasn't dangerous, but it was verbal, somewhat physical. It was destroying my self-esteem, if I had it in the first place. That could be lethal. And 3 days in, I didn't ask for help. I didn't speak up. I'm in ninth grade. I thought you just have to do this for a couple of years. It's not necessary. This Rosh Yeshiva was in 11th grade. They had a basketball team then. And he was the center. Which means he's not even 12th grade, but he's the star of the yeshiva. And he also learned well, apparently. He became a yeshiva and a very good yeshiva afterwards. He saw what was going on the third day he was there. The first 2 days were Gehenna, he said. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was going to be out of yeshiva in the 1950s. I'm leaving. He came over B'Shas Maisa, and how do we say in Staten Island? He explained to the 10th graders that if I ever see this again, you guys are going to be seeing me in my gym. And he said it never happened again. Not only that, I was the star of the 9th grade now because this 11th grader said he's my friend. One Maisa took 3 minutes. The whole thing was solved. So he said, I want to thank him. He doesn't realize he saved my life. So I said, this I got to hear. I brought him over. Taka for 10 seconds didn't recognize him, and then all of a sudden he yelled out, Yossi! Gave him a big hug. He said, you saved my life. I said, well, you saved your life. I had anything to do with you. He told him over the mice, he didn't even remember it. So that's a ta'elis. If you have to go tell him, tomorrow can you go over to them? Baruch Hashem, in this case, he just did it himself. A lot of things we could do, and Rahman Allah, a lot of damage you could do if you just don't think about what you're going to say. And just like if you say something that's wrong, it is many areas involved. A conscious omission when you could have done something is also leaving a lot on the table, is also an avla. And it's a tremendous amount we're going to accomplish. You just got to think it through. Okay, Baruch Hashem, the schus tzibah, my voice made it. And Mitzvah Hashem, next year I'll be speaking and coming from better circumstances, but Bashert Dafka now, and a lot to think about. Okay, thank you.
Shem Irgen Shir Torah, Mrs. Boston, I'd like to give a big Yosef Koyach to Rabbi Viener for the inspiring Joshua. I'd like to give a Yosef Koyach to the sponsors of tonight's shir, the Gross family, Lili Nishmas Aviyam, Reb Chaim, Ben Pinchas Viener Bracha, the founding board members of Irgen Shir Torah, Yotzai Gimelov, Tenishpos of Shur B'Sar Chaim. Also learned as a chutz for the father of Rabbi Viener Shlita, Abdul Mechaim Chaim, Reb Osher Tzvi, Ben Rabbi Yosef Michal Olav Shalom, and Tenishpos of Shur B'Sar Chaim. To have the great chutz sponsoring a shir, supporting a shir Torah, call 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Chananya ben Akasha, Emar Tzakadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakes Es Yisrael, Fikir Chibram Torah Mitzvah, Shenemar Adonai Chofetz Aman Tzidkoi, Yagdol Torah V'Yader.